From Wall Street to Main Street to help small business owners have the same capital as corporate America and give them the same resources as a larger company. We cover business funding, business credit, scaling, business consulting, and much more. Check out the website at shieldadvisorygroup.com. Welcome to the show, The Liquid Lunch Project.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Show. I am Matthew R. Meehan, alongside my partner, the Professor Luigi Rosabianca. What's going on this week, Lou?
Matt, how are you, partner? Our audience has spoken, and we heed the call. There's a problem in America today with hiring. So we found the hiring geek, self-proclaimed hiring geek. This is his title. Startup builder, author of Healing Career Wounds, keynote speaker. Welcome to the podcast, Rick Girard, the hiring geek.
Hey, Matt, Luigi, great to be here. Thank you so much for having me, man.
Rick, right from the get-go, I go to your website, and the first thing I read, from the moment he sprung from the womb, Rick Girard has been a pain in the ass. I mean, that's some
me.
claim to fame.
Yeah, I mean, my mom would totally agree with that, 100%.
Now, how do you leverage that pain in the ass-ism to teaching America at large how to hire properly?
You know, I think it's my stubbornness in like really being more of a contrarian in like looking at what other people do and figuring out other ways in which something could work that probably is more effective than what everybody is doing. Because if you look at results of what people are doing, they're all doing kind of the same thing and they're expecting a different result every time. But especially when you're talking about hiring or recruiting or anything to that effect, it's purely a numbers game most of the time. And, you know, you're getting paid a lot of money on mediocre results pretty much. And so I just, and maybe it goes back to me being a bit of like an efficiency geek or something like that. I want to work as little as much as possible to gain the most rewards from my time.
You work with dozens of businesses, hundreds of businesses.
Yeah.
What do you see as the pattern of what entrepreneurs do wrong?
So here's what I see right now, right? So the people who are in the job market, the great resignation people that are checking out, they've completely changed their mindset. So we don't really have a candidate selection process anymore. We don't really have We're not really the ones making the decisions. The candidates are. The people who are looking for jobs and the people who are actually passively looking for jobs, because there's a lot more passive job seekers today. They're the ones really making the decision, and they're jumping out of process real quickly. So the big mistake that I see a lot of organizations make is that you got to evolve with what the people want. And what the people want is not really necessarily the money, because I think a lot of people were jumping for money last year, and then they've realized that, hey, I'm not fulfilled. I went from one shitty company to another one, and they're just paying me more money. And now I want to be fulfilled in my job. I want to know what's in it for me above and beyond the paycheck. Realizing that, taking it back to the fact that what is it that really people are attracted to or repelled by, and that's the core values of the company. So I think the big mistake that entrepreneurs are making right now is not really taking that seriously, in that I have value, whether or not you want to recognize it, you have core values for your company. They exist in the company, whether or not they're up on the wall and they're a language and people actually operate under those core values is a different question. Is you know, only you can answer that. Having those core values and then interviewing people based on those core values and bringing people into the company that relate to those core values, that's where the magic happens. That's where you start bringing in people that really thrive in the organization, and you can stack the deck with A players today.
So, you know, Rick, the interview process has definitely changed since I've been in the workforce, which is going on 20 years now, right? What are some things right now that small business owners can do to make their interview process more effective?
Well, first, you know, it's funny because I don't feel like it's changed really at all. I feel like if I went to an interview, it's pretty much the same interview when I got my first job at Burger King, like, you know, 30 years ago, right? Like, so I feel like
Maybe the questions are the same, but with a lot of this remote hiring and not going into an office and meeting people face to face, technology has changed the way companies are forced to interview these days.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, there's we've gone up like 900% on Zoom interviews, right? So almost every company is doing a Zoom interview first and then coming through. I believe that right now, where companies need to shift to is the focus on actually the phone screen first. That is the very first indicator as to how important hiring is to your company and the impression that you're giving to somebody. So doing a phone screen of, hey, do you have 4 years of this, 5 years of this, and how much are you looking to make in 10 minutes is a complete waste of opportunity, because what you want to do is you want to gain buy-in from that person. So if you take the interview process, because really what ends up happening is we do a quick phone screen, then we bring somebody in through an interview process, and then we spend a lot of time on the back end trying to get somebody to join. We're just selling. Problem is everybody else is doing the same thing. So if you flip it and you spend time on the front end to make sure that somebody's positioned well for the organization first, and then extracting the data from them to understand what's really important to them, and being honest with, hey, here's where we fit, here's where we don't fit. What do you think? What would you like to do? And you kind of lead them to lead the process. Now you've got a situation where they're telling you, hey, I really want to interview and here's why. And now you're gaining emotional buy-in. And that is super powerful, because when you get to the end of the process, you're not focused on the money, you're focused on the value that you bring to that person in helping them to develop their career or be in a place where they're really going to thrive.
Are you seeing a lot of candidates come from other companies or people that just aren't in the workforce right now?
Well, there's a big hidden pool of, I don't think it's a hidden pool of talent, but there's a big pool of talent of what my friend Kelly Robinson calls modern elders, right? Like those over 40-ish, because nobody's really chasing those people. They're chasing those 5 to 10 year engineers or the 5-year kind of people that have some experience. So that's, there's a huge pool of talent of people that are they have the ability to sit on the sidelines right now, and maybe they're doing consulting work or they're doing something else. But there's a lot of like really solid A players that the companies could be pulling from, and they bring expertise. And then a lot of them, again, what's more important to them is not the money. It's the opportunity.
We keep hearing that. We had a guest on the podcast the other day saying that he actually brought his company all remote in 2015, so he was ahead of the curve. And they've gotten accolades and awards for being one of the top companies to work for. And it's their time off policy, right? They don't micromanage their people. They give them the space to figure it out. I think that's changed inside of business in general over the last 20 years, right? Where you don't really have a manager standing over you and watching everything that you do. But he also spoke about the way people are rewarded inside of a business. Some people like money. Some people like to be, applauded publicly. Other people just want a gift, right? So how do you add that into and find out what the love language of that candidate is to see if he fits in the core values of the company?
Well, I mean, that brings it back to the interview process, right? So what's really key in the interview process is that you want to ask questions that align well with the organization, that extract evidence to support whether or not somebody really lives your company's core values. If you're in an environment that's a command and control, there are people that do really well in that environment. You just have to, you have to find the people that hey, I need somebody to tell me what to do and I do it. Right. If your organization is such that, hey, look I give people a lot of freedom and, I just hold people accountable, then you need to ask questions to extract data as to whether or not somebody operates in that way. We all operate differently. You have A players who operate under command control, and you have A players that operate under fiercely independent. You really have to just bring people in who are going to function well in your environment. They're going to add to the culture as opposed to pull from it. And you really have to, as an executive or a leader, you have to hold really sacred and dear those values, and know that you're being judged by all your other employees, by the people that you bring in that don't fit.
Rick, give us some insights as to your Hire operating systems, your HireOS.
So HireOS is essentially, we're actually blowing that out into a SaaS platform right now. And the idea behind HireOS is that we want to create a plug and play system for really every organization where they can manage and run their interview process, because that's really, again, where I feel is the root of why we make bad hires. And so it's managing the interview process from actually putting the structure in place to creating interview questions that are built around your core values, and then finally having that feedback channel, and that communication loop to where decisions are made very quickly and the feedback is given very quickly in the interview process, so you're not leaving people hanging.
Rick, tell us a little bit about the mental mindset with entrepreneurs. When we date, we can date for months, maybe years before we settle down and get married. Yeah. We plan a vacation with friends, and we're dissecting who to invite and who not to invite. But when it comes to new hires, we're so haphazard. Why is that?
Oh God, I think it's the pressure of, we need to get this filled quickly, right? If you're taking investment and you've been given a whole bunch of money, I've got to scale, right? So I see this so often. I just need to get this. So companies will be, I think the mindset is, okay, I'm going to get somebody great in here, right? And then you start running the interview process, and then your top 2 or 3 candidates don't accept because they end up taking an offer somewhere else. And then finally you get in the mindset of, I just need to get this filled. I need to get this off my plate. So then they put anybody who brings the skills in, 9 times out of 10, it probably is going to be a marginal or a bad hire. If you get a good hire out of that, great, you got lucky. It's because we haven't taken the time to understand what's important to that person and gotten that A player to lean into the organization because they're positioned well for it. That's where we fail. And we also treat the process like it's a transaction, and it's really not a transaction anymore.
Rick, Matt and I love the human journey, the personal story. Yeah. Your book is called Healing Career Wounds. Tell us a little bit about your career wounds that led you to be this pain in the ass success.
Yeah, so it was funny because I started, I had the dream of being a Playboy photographer when I was a young buck. And I actually worked on a couple Playboy shoots, and I realized that number one, I was fairly good at it, but my reasoning for being there wasn't really my calling.
Is that where you started to learn how to recruit for the fifth? I have a feeling.
Yeah, so I actually worked a couple shoots, and I kind of realized I was working like really hard for like no money. And I realized that I was just basically a glorified construction worker and film loader back in the day. So the poor starving artist thing just did not bode well with me. And then at the time I had a cousin who was really successful. He was a recruiter, and he decided he was going to move up to Sun Valley, Idaho, and asked me if I wanted to come. And so I'm like, hey, is there snowboarding there? And he said, yeah, absolutely. We're right in the ski resort area. And I said, I'm done. Let's go. I'm in. So I made the decision in like 5 minutes based on snowboarding. And then luckily I fell into a career that I loved. And I'll tell you, my first 6 months was brutal. I hated it. I wanted to just stuff my pillow over my face every night. But once I started to get good at it or competent at it, I fell into something I really loved. And then I got to a point where I was doing extremely well monetarily. And then, then I started seeking, well, why can't I do this better? Because if you're working a contingency recruiting model, it's just a grind of getting lots of candidates out and hoping people fall out the bottom of the funnel. I don't do well with hope. I like probability much better than crossing my fingers and going, hopefully I'll make a placement this month.
Rick, help us get a little bit granular with the hiring process. Entrepreneurs are not just hiring internal staff anymore. They're hiring consultants, outsourced help. They're hiring professionals as part of their team, whether it be accountants, consultants. Does your process reflect a change in approach when dealing with those two different staff systems? Or is it basically they need to respect your culture regardless of how they work with you?
Yeah, I mean, they should, consultants should be respecting your culture regardless. But if you're bringing if you're bringing somebody in, a hired gun in to do some work for your organization, it's really important that they don't disrupt the culture. So, you should have these, you should definitely have an alignment interview questionnaire. Like, you should go through it to make sure that that person's not going to run away or oust, some of your top performers. But, I'm a big proponent of, I learned this from a guy named Steve Newcomb, renting gold as opposed to hiring silver, right? So his concept is, find the best person who can come in for a short time and just hit the cover off the ball, and then kind of work it in such a way where that person essentially can work their way into the organization if in fact there's more work for them.
Talk us through a little bit about your theory of offering perhaps profit sharing, equity incentives to key personnel.
I think they're great because compensation is a part of the hiring process. It's not the most important part today, but people tend to focus on those things. Like, those are the reasons why. I found that people will make a leap and they'll go to another company if they see value above and beyond just the paycheck and the compensation. And there's just too much focus on, well, we're not compensating people enough. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. If you're not compensating people enough, and you're using that as an excuse as to why you're not hiring people, it really comes down to the reason why you're not hiring people is that you probably have a shitty culture, you have a bad leadership team, or you have some dysfunctional, you have some dysfunction in the organization that you need to deal with first. Because there are a lot of people out there on the sidelines that you can certainly get independent of like what you hear in the media, right? So they're important, and I think it's great to incentivize people for sure.
Do you see a lot of candidates coming in now not wanting to be W-2 employees, but to be independent contractors so they can have their freedom? A recent study came out and said by 2030, this gig economy is going to be 60% of the workforce.
I'm not seeing it as much, but I do use contractors for small projects and stuff like that in my company. Again, I think you're going to have people that do want it, and you're going to have people that don't want it. I'm in California, where you really can't hire 1099 because the state of California will come after you and say, "Hey, look, that's really an employee." So they have to have their own company. If they don't have their own, and they also, I guess they call it the plumber's test, right? So they have to be like a plumber. They bring all their own tools. They set their own hours, and you can't really, they're just a hired gun for a short amount of time. So I'm not seeing it as much, but I can see a trend going that way for sure.
So let's talk about the book a little bit. So
yeah,
first of all, what gave you the idea to write the book? And it was forwarded by Gino Wickman, excuse me.
Yeah.
He was the author of Traction and Rocket Fuel and a few other books, and he's very, high regarded in the hiring world and running a company and the process and culture. Were you a student of his? How did this come about?
Yeah, you know what? I've been involved with a couple companies where we run EOS, so I've been a fan. And as a fanboy, when I wrote the book, I reached out. I actually cold called him and said, "Hey, Gino, I wrote a book. It plugs really well into EOS. And the reason why I wrote the book is because I don't scale. And I do this on a daily basis with my clients. But the truth is, like, the value in this system can help out every small business so they can put a blueprint of how they run their whole interview process independent of me. And so that's why I wrote the book. That's why I wanted to get it out and give people the opportunity to look at hiring from a different perspective and then be able to implement that stuff. So I even have scripts on what to say and how to say it in the discovery call. Like, I included pretty much like most of my playbook so that somebody could just plug and play it into their business and run with it.
So at this point, why don't you tell everybody where they can go out and find that book so they can go pick
it up? I'm so bad at plugging myself, but yeah, It's called Healing Career Wounds. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's like basically all your favorite bookstores. You can get it. Just about to release the Audible. So I've been busy with other things, and it was supposed to be done end of last year, and we're just wrapping that up. So it's available wherever you buy books.
So Rick, what's next for you personally and in business? You know, we've seen you're working with startups. You're revolutionizing the recruiting and hiring space. Where do you want to go from here?
So what's next for me is we're building a SaaS platform out. And the idea behind that is we want to be able to have a platform in which people can actually come in and they can build out their core values. They can build their interview questions around their core values, pull that content, and also write job descriptions that are based on that. And then essentially be able to train all their people and take them to a point where they can run an interview process through our platform. And everything is kind of preloaded, pre-done for them, and all they have to do is execute. And we're using some advanced AI and machine learning so that the system is being, like, the conversations are being analyzed so that we're confirming whether or not somebody is a good hire, is not a good hire.
Rick Girard on the cloud. Definitely come back to the podcast when that launches.
Oh yeah, I would love to, man. Love to.
How far out you think you are from launching that?
We're launching our MVP in the next few months. We are actually, so we're launching a core values builder in the next few weeks. So it'll give somebody the ability to kind of build out their core values and then build out interview questions and build job descriptions. So that's going to be kind of a free option that we're going to be launching. That's going to kind of be a lead up to the interview platform.
That's super cool. Why don't you tell them where they can actually get in touch with you on the socials if they're interested in jumping in?
I'm going to have to send that to you because we don't have that completely done yet, right? So we're building it out, but it's going to be under HireOS. Okay.
Are you on LinkedIn or any of the social media channels they could reach out to you directly?
Yeah, I'm on all of them. LinkedIn is the best place to get me. You can also drop me an email if you're interested, rick@stridesearch.com. And, or you can find me via my podcast, which is Hire Power Radio. And that's HIRE Power, POWER Radio, RADIO.com.
Rick, thanks so much for being on the show, my man. We learned a lot today. We appreciate you. But before you run, I have one question that I'm asking you this season. Describe yourself in one word.
Hydrodynamic.
Never heard that one before. Gerard, everybody. And that's a wrap of the Liquid Lunch Show.
Thank you for listening to the show. And make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you on the next episode of The Liquid Lunch Project.